This is my game controller. There are many game controllers like it, but this one is mine. Without me, my game controller is useless.
And now for a taste of things to come.
It's time to step up your game.
Let's get ready to rumble!
You're listening to Game On.
Falcon Punch!
Your inside track to gaming and fitness.
Of course!
Mamma mia! We've got interviews one-on-one with your gaming experts.
Hi, folks. This is Jim Cummings.
This is Courtney Taylor.
This is Duke Nukem.
And we'll help you keep fit along the way.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
Get ready, because Game On starts now.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
Joining me on Game On today is Jason Gallaty, but you might know him better as Theophany, the creator of Time's End Majora's Mask Remixed. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Jeff. Thanks.
Oh, not a problem. So, Jason, let's talk a little bit about your background first. What got you into creating and making your own music in the first place?
Well, I've always been interested in music. I don't have any formal training, but I got into video game mixing, and I've just kind of pick things up along the way, online tutorials, funny new sounds. It's definitely just a hobby, but I'm really into it, and I spend a lot of my free time producing, It's just something I like to do.
Now, before we talk about Time's End, you are also responsible for the Crystal Flash remix, focusing on music from Metroid. Have you always been a fan of Nintendo games?
Yeah, I'd say so. I grew up on games like Super Metroid, so games have definitely made an impact on me, especially with getting into music. There's an online community out there called Overclocked Remix, ocremix.org. It's basically all about video game remixing and soundtracks and stuff like that. So it's just sort of what inspired me to get into all this in the first place. It's kind of more about the nostalgia in a lot of ways. You have a chance to sort of like bring your own style, when you're making music, and I think a lot of people appreciate that.
So let's dive into Time's End. Take me through the process of making this soundtrack. How long have you been working away on this?
About 3 years now. I started in 2009, just getting ideas down. I think with any creative project, you have to give yourself as much time as possible just to develop things. You're never going to have all the best ideas the first time you sit down to work on a project, so it's more of a process. With this project, I went through a lot of revisions. Certain tracks, like Terrible Fate, for example, I did multiple versions and rough drafts that sound like completely different, just different approaches. With this project, it was a lot of like experimentation in finding the right approach, and then just putting the time in and getting the production, up to quality, and trying to find the right sounds to sort of evoke like the mood I was trying to go for.
And I've got to say, the remix soundtrack here is beautifully done. Absolutely incredible. Really, you've captured the essence of what Majora's Mask is. And how did you go about doing this then? How did you go about capturing the feel of this dark installment in the Zelda series?
I think a big part of it was choosing the right tracks that like represented the best moments in the story and not trying to do everything. It was more about finding the right inspiration or scenes from the game that could feel more like a film when you put it into music. I wasn't worried about accuracy as much as like atmosphere and feeling, especially with like borrowed tracks like Lover's Mask is like Zelda's Lullaby. It's not necessarily Majora's Mask, but I was more trying to capture like the spirit and the mood of the game as opposed to only doing tracks that are exclusive to the soundtrack,
Oh, totally. So what sort of support did you have in making this remixed album? Was this all your own work, or did you have support from other artists as well?
There's definitely a lot of help from the performers. I had produced the music in advance. It was just a different experience to be able to send the track to someone and then have them come back with like live stuff. And it was just like, I sort of tried to encourage them to just do whatever. Trust your instinct as a musician or a performer, because I felt like that would get you the best results and the most like feeling out of the performance. Like outside of that, I think the biggest help was from my friends who helped me during the campaign promotion of the album. And, these are like people I've known forever, like people I went to school with and people I work with. We all work at Ember Lab, which is like a visual effects and animation studio my friend started a couple years ago. The mask art, the website, none of that would have been possible without their help. We were all working on this up until like the last seconds before the release. I mean, even when the site went down and stuff, it was just an awesome experience. And like, it was crazy to see it blow up the way it did. Like, none of us were expecting that. We thought it might have gotten some reaction, but just not the way it did, you know?
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned the campaign around this as well, because that really caught me and got my attention to this soundtrack with the countdown leading up to the end of the Mayan calendar. What made you capitalize on this moment?
I think that was one of the whole reasons I wanted to do the album, like, in the first place. I mean, there's no other game with a real world tie-in like that. You know, it's an amazing game already, but it seems to be overshadowed by, like, more popular games in the franchise, like, I don't know, Ocarina of Time. I just thought if someone was ever going to do a Majora's Mask remix album, I mean, it would have to coincide with the whole end of the world thing, you know? I mean, it's only going to happen once, and I felt like anyone who's ever played Majora's Mask would be wondering if something, you know, was going to happen for this game on, you know, December 21st. I mean, knowing Nintendo, to a certain extent, it seems like for a long time, they kind of pretended like this game, like, never came out. Even with, like, Metroid over the 25th anniversary, they just didn't seem to, like, mention anything about the series. So I didn't know if it was possible, but I wanted to do something to pay tribute in my own way.
Jason, thank you very much for joining us today. If people want to know more about the Time's End soundtrack, or more about your work in general, where should they go?
You can check out terriblefate.com. The music's right there on the front page, and there's a link to my Facebook where I can let you know about new releases. And there's also, like, a Bandcamp link. You can check out my other stuff, too.
Jason, a pleasure having you on Game On today.
Thank you. It's been great.
That was Jason Gallaty, the creator of Time's End, the Majora's Mask remix. I'm Jeff Johnson. You're listening to Game On.